There's a quiet kind of power inside the British monarchy that never makes noise, never chases a headline, and never asks to be seen. And for decades, that power has had a single name attached to it. While the world watches the crown, the ceremonies, and the endless speculation about who will wear it next, one figure keeps working in the background, medal after medal, engagement after engagement, year after year, without complaint. So when reports began to swirl that King Charles was slowly preparing to hand the weight of the future to his son, Prince William, everyone expected the story to be about the two men. Almost no one expected the most interesting reaction to come from the woman standing just off to the side. Because if the reports circulating in royal circles are to be believed, Princess Anne is watching this handover unfold very closely, and she is not staying completely silent about it. To understand why her response matters so much, you first have to understand the moment the monarchy is living through. King Charles waited longer than almost any heir in modern history to sit on the throne. He was in his 70s when the crown finally came to him after the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. For a man who had spent an entire lifetime preparing, the role was never going to be something he handed away lightly. And yet, within 2 years of becoming king, his world changed again. In early 2024, the palace confirmed that Charles had been diagnosed with cancer, a shock that forced the whole institution to think about the future far sooner than it wanted to. That single announcement changed the tone of everything. Suddenly, the questions that royal watchers usually kept polite and distant became urgent and real. How much longer could the king carry the full load? Who was already carrying part of it? And what would happen if the crown needed to move to the next generation faster than tradition had planned? These were no longer lazy questions for a slow news day. They were the questions the entire monarchy was quietly asking itself behind closed doors. Into that uncertainty stepped Prince William. According to multiple reports over the past year, the Prince of Wales has been steadily taking on a larger and more visible role, to the point where some palace insiders describe him as functioning almost like a monarch in waiting and practice, even if nothing has officially changed on paper. His diplomatic meetings, his growing public presence, and his influence over family decisions have all fed a single growing perception that William is already helping to steer the ship. Some sources who spoke to royal commentators went even further, suggesting that in many ways he is treated as the future in all but title, with the institution preparing itself emotionally for a shift that has not yet happened officially. It is important to be careful here, because much of this comes from unnamed sources and royal experts rather than from the palace itself, and Buckingham Palace has stayed characteristically tight-lipped. Insiders have been clear that whatever is being discussed is not some dramatic abdication in the old sense. One senior source described any future transition as something meant to look measured and dignified, a gentle passing of responsibility rather than a sudden break. Another put it more poetically, saying the monarchy survives because it changes before it is forced to, so any handover would be designed to feel natural rather than like a surrender. Whether or not those predictions ever come true, the mood they describe is real. The idea of William carrying the future is no longer a distant fantasy. It is a live conversation. And that is exactly where Princess Anne enters the picture, not as an outsider, but as one of the very few people whose opinion actually carries weight inside those rooms. To appreciate her position, you have to understand what Anne represents. She is the Princess Royal, the only daughter of the late Queen Elizabeth, and for years she has quietly worn the crown of a very different title given to her by the public and the press, the hardest-working royal in the family. This is not flattery. It is measured in numbers. Year after year, she tops the internal lists for official engagements, showing up at hundreds of events while attracting almost none of the drama that surrounds her more famous relatives. In one recent year, she was reported to have carried out well over 400 public engagements, a workload that would exhaust people half her age. At 75, she shows no sign of slowing down, and she has spoken with pride about the fact that she simply keeps going. That reputation is the key to everything, because when someone who works that hard and complains that little begins to express an opinion about how the next generation is handling its duties, people inside the palace tend to listen. And according to several royal reports, Anne has indeed had things to say. One of the most talked-about threads came from an interview Anne gave to Vanity Fair, in which she offered what commentators described as a firm and honest warning to the younger royals about the future of the institution. Her message, in essence, was that you cannot simply look at the older generations, decide their way was wrong, and throw it all out. She was pushing back, gently but clearly, against the idea that modernizing the monarchy means abandoning the traditions and steady habits that kept it standing for so long. A former royal butler who commented on her remarks read them as a kind of strict guidance to William and the younger family members, a reminder that the crown is not a brand to be reinvented every few years, but an institution to be protected and passed on with care. That warning takes on real meaning when you place it next to what William himself has been signaling. Over the past couple of years, the Prince of Wales has spoken openly, in interviews and casual conversations, about wanting to do things differently when his time comes. He has talked about a monarchy with, as he put it, a smaller letter in the word royal, a lighter, more modern, more approachable version of the institution. Reports in the British press have described his broader ambitions to overhaul palace operations, to simplify grand ceremonies like the coronation, and to make the whole family feel more connected to ordinary modern life. He is said to be very conscious of how much the monarchy costs the public, and eager to prove that it remains relevant and worth keeping. For a reformer like William, that vision is exciting. For a guardian of tradition like Anne, it is something to watch carefully. And this is where the real tension in the story lives, not in some invented family shouting match, but in a genuine difference of instinct between two people who both love the institution and want it to survive, yet who see very different paths to that survival. The reports make that friction feel very human. According to one account that circulated widely, Anne was said to be tired and even a little annoyed at the balance of duties within the family. A source quoted in the British press pointed out that she was still handling most of the investiture ceremonies at Windsor, the events where medals and honors are formally presented, even though William now lives nearby. The implication was simple and slightly pointed. The older aunt was doing the steady, unglamorous work of the crown, while the future king was, in the eyes of some, still finding his balance between family life and full royal duty. This criticism of William is not new, and it is worth being fair about it. He and his wife, Catherine, have for years been described by some observers as work-shy, a label that stings and that their defenders strongly reject. Those defenders point out something reasonable, that William has deliberately prioritized giving his 3 children a normal and grounded childhood, and that this was far easier to manage when he was a more junior royal, with plenty of senior relatives sharing the load. Now, with a deliberately slimmed-down monarchy and fewer working royals than his grandmother ever had, the expectations on him have grown enormously. The very family he is being asked to lead is smaller and more stretched than it has been in living memory. So Anne's reported frustration is not really the pettiness it might first appear to be. It reflects a genuine structural problem. There are simply fewer hands to do the work, and the ones doing the most are getting older. When Anne is said to be irritated that she is still running investitures in a castle where the future king now sleeps, the deeper worry underneath it is about whether the next generation is ready to carry a load that is only going to get heavier. And yet, and this is the part of the story that so many dramatic retellings get completely wrong, Anne is not William's opponent. Every serious royal observer who has looked at their relationship describes something closer to the opposite. Behind the reported irritation sits a bond that experts consistently call warm, steady, and genuinely close. Commentators who study the family have described Anne as a dominant but not bossy presence, a woman with the same no-nonsense attitude her late mother, the Queen, was famous for. And rather than resenting the man who will one day outrank her in every way, she is said to be one of William's greatest sources of support as he approaches kingship. One expert put it in almost architectural terms, calling Anne, along with figures like Catherine, the Duchess Sophie, and Prince Edward, part of the stronghold on which the future of the monarchy will rest. Far from fighting the future, Anne is regularly named as one of the people who will make that future possible. There is even a clear picture of what her role might look like when William finally becomes king. A former royal aide predicted that Anne would simply keep doing what she has always done, working tirelessly, and remaining absolutely vital to the family, while continuing to offer the honest, grounded counsel that the crown so often lacks. The same aide had no doubt she would still be a working royal even under her nephew's reign, respected as a true pillar of the family rather than pushed aside as a relic of the old order. Interestingly, some experts have noted that if the modern rules of succession had applied at her birth, Anne would sit far higher in the line to the throne than she currently does, close behind William and his children. The public, more than one commentator has suggested, would happily accept her closer to the center of things because they trust her. This is the quiet truth at the heart of the whole story. Anne's response to the idea of Charles entrusting William with the future is not rebellion, and it is not jealousy. It is something rarer and far more valuable inside a family that lives under constant public pressure. It is honesty. She is the voice in the room willing to say the uncomfortable thing, that tradition matters, that duty cannot be optional, that the crown is heavier than it looks, and that admiration for a future king should never mean pretending the work is being shared fairly when it is not. That honesty has become even more important because of the storms the monarchy has weathered around it. The family has spent recent years dealing with painful scandals connected to Charles's brother, the former Prince Andrew, and his association with the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, a saga that eventually saw Andrew lose his royal titles and his longtime home. In moments like that, when the institution is under intense and unwelcome scrutiny, experts have pointed to Anne as one of the few people capable of steadying the ship. She is described as giving Charles the kind of down-to-earth advice that a king surrounded by cautious courtiers rarely hears, and commentators have stressed how important it is that a monarch listens to voices that challenge him rather than only those that agree. So when you strip away the noise and look at the reports honestly, the shape of the real story becomes clear. Charles, facing his own health battle and the long shadow of a lifetime spent waiting, is slowly and carefully preparing for a future in which William carries more and more of the crown's weight. William, ambitious and modern, wants to reshape that crown into something lighter and more relevant for a changing world. And standing between the reigning king and the future one is Anne, not blocking the path, but guarding it, making sure that in the rush toward reinvention, nothing essential gets thrown away. Reminding the young that the throne is not a possession to be redesigned, but a duty to be earned, every single day, in the small and unglamorous work that never trends and never applauds itself. The palace will never confirm most of what has been reported, and it is right to treat the anonymous sources and expert predictions as the informed speculation they are rather than settled fact. Handovers, timelines, private frustrations, these are things the monarchy keeps behind thick walls. But the pattern that emerges from years of reporting is consistent enough to trust in outline, even where the details stay uncertain. There is a king thinking about the end of his reign. There is an heir thinking about the shape of his own. And there is a princess royal who has spent her whole life proving what real royal service looks like, now quietly making sure the two men remember it too. In the end, that may be Anne's greatest gift to the future she will help shape but never rule. She does not need the throne to matter. She does not need a coronation to prove her worth. She simply keeps showing up, keeps telling the truth, and keeps holding the line between the monarchy that was and the monarchy that is still trying to decide what it wants to become. And perhaps that is the real headline hiding behind all the speculation, that the future of the crown may depend less on who finally wears it, and more on whether the next generation is willing to listen to the one person who was never afraid to tell them the hard truth.